Hello everybody and welcome to Tiger Tales The Lost Stories. Tiger Tales is a YouTube channel where I write and record my fanfictions and my stories and upload them in an audio drama format for you guys to listen to. Now this is Tiger Tales The Lost Stories, where the biggest change here is I write in a first person perspective. And I also plan on putting a big twist on the fan fiction format. Today we're diving into a brand new story. William Cranston is a character that I made specifically for my Power Rangers storylines. A man dubbed himself William Cranston because of Billy ends up working in a place without time and space and meddles with all the lives of my Power Rangers stories. Power Rangers V Foundation, Power Rangers Magnificent Megaforce, Power Rangers Cyberforce V2 and many more. If you want to go listen to those stories, then go to Tiger Tales and give them a good listen, because you'll understand this character a lot more. And not only that, he's also affected the lives to other Rangers from other storylines written by other people. Some being Mark, the Red Cornish Ranger, in his Power Rangers Royal Britannia story on the Notes for Comments podcast, and the entirety of the Power Rangers Universe 19 Power Rangers storylines have been affected by William Cranston as well. So that being said, let's dive in with The Diary of William Cranston, Entry 1, The Only Mistake. Sparks had brought us to the White Plane, some form of safe haven, a dimensional plane of existence. It was where Sparks had got his mystery powers, and where he then shared them with us. He told us that our new forms had been created and were already placed in the universes where we had to make our champions. Champions where, once gone through the hardships that they had to go through, would become mysteries as well for the big fight against the creators of the multiverse. He told us that those forms were moulded to the universal rules, and we would have some abilities on top of the multiversal godlike powers that being a mystery already gave us. Sparks went on and told us that there were a few rules. We were not allowed to meddle in the lives of our chosen champions. They would have to go through the pains and pleasures of life, learn the important lessons before we could recruit them. Another rule was no getting spotted or found out about the overall mystery plan. Being a mystery led to complicated stuff, and we could not bring that to our champions just yet. Our final rule was no experimenting, no trying to do something dangerous or trying to look cool. Sparks told us that our normal forms would be put into a deep sleep-like state, almost like a cryo-sleep. Our souls would then be transferred to these new vessels, so to speak. It was a safety protocol, just in case we die in our vessels, we wouldn't actually die, we would just then have to go back to our bodies. It was also, just in case we were ever found, we would be safe. We also had other protocols, other mysteries with other jobs to make sure that we were safe, and the universes we were using to make champions were kept safe and in balance as well. I got told to lay down, and I started floating in midair. Luckily, I could fly. So I floated there and I closed my eyes, and I felt this overwhelming light come over me, and then my soul was transferred into my vessel. 1 week had passed, and I dubbed the name William Cranston. My vessel's home world was nothing but a black hole. Someone called Rasfer, also known as the Banker to some, was a multiversal being hell-bent on destroying the Power Ranger multiverse. I did not like the idea of him finding out that each multiverse was in a multiverse of its own, and it went on kind of like a bubble inside of a bubble, but went on to an infinity. I stared at what my vessel's world once was. I had to forget about my original form and focus on this one, which meant eventually proved difficult, as I wanted to act revenge on this Rasfer, even though I'd never actually lived this life. But I was also on a mission. I had to make Power Ranger champions. I had to form Power Rangers. Singular ones, teams, duos and trios. I looked at the forms of Power Rangers, and it was incredibly tedious on where to start. I took the name William Cranston because I liked the original from the Prime Power Rangers universe, something we could not enter. Not in the act of trying, we could not actually physically enter the prime universes, but I was also allowed to get some help. So I went on a search. The less involvement I did was better, so I went looking for some help, and I found a version of the Lord Zed. The biggest difference between this one and the prime one was he had contact with Rasford directly, and had more power and was more devilish in nature. I found him walking around a dimensional tunnel, swirling tubes which would then go on for ages unless you left them to enter a different universe. These dimensional tunnels were used to traverse the multiverse itself. I found him just stood there. "Hello, Lord Zed," I called out. I stood there in my Ranger form, as I did not want anyone knowing my true identity. I had some form of Knight Ranger, based off a chess piece. I had told Sparks before that I loved playing chess, and had played several matches with him before my soul transference. I told Sparks I wanted to keep playing after I started my quest, so Sparks made it that I could do so. "What do you want, Ranger?" the Lord Zed barked, his back still turned to me. "I want to offer you a chance to help me on a quest, not only to cause multiversal destruction, but only... The catch is, I need Rangers alive. Torment them all you want, drag them through hell, but I do need them alive," I told Lord Zed awkwardly. He turned around and summoned his staff. "Why on earth would I help you, and not destroy the Rangers myself?" the Lord Zed asked me. "I need them for a bigger quest," I explained. The Lord Zed took a step forward. A slight chuckle came from him. "So how would this work?" Lord Zed asked me. "I would make them, and we would start a plan," I explained. "Wait. You can make Rangers?" Lord Zed asked me, his voice filled with intrigue. "More or less," I replied. "Why would I help you make Rangers, when I can kill you, and take your power for my own?" Lord Zed barked. He then pointed his Z-staff at me, and a blast of lightning erupted from the staff, and flew right at me. I rolled to one side and dodged the attack. I held out my hand, and I summoned my King Chess great sword, and it appeared in my grip. I swung it with one hand. It was like I was swinging a blade of grass. I swung it down, and an energy wave flew at the Lord Zed. He swung his staff and disrupted my energy attack. Lord Zed then ran at me, and jabbed me with his staff. I held my greatsword down, using my blade to block the attack. Using my foot, I pushed the blade forward, and making the Lord Zed stumble back. Then I swung my blade, and slashed the Lord Zed, knocking him back. He flew backwards, and bounced across the floor, hitting the ground hard. He grunted as he slowly climbed to his feet. I walked over, and stabbed my sword into the ground. I held out my hand, offering him to his feet, offering friendship. He then jabbed his staff past my head and brought it down quickly. The Z on the top of his staff hooked on my neck, and Lord Zed pulled me down. Then he swung his fist up, uppercutting me in the face. I was knocked into the air by his brute strength. Lord Zed then jumped into the air, surpassing my body, and then he blasted lightning at me, striking my shoulder. I spun as I fell, and I crashed onto the floor. My shoulder burned. I sat up and looked down to see my Ranger form had been damaged by the attack. I could feel the morphing grid fade away from me slowly. I knew I needed some help. I triggered my mystery powers, and I pulled in the closest Ranger to me from the closest dimension. A man appeared. An older gentleman appeared in a striking flash of light.
"What the hell?"
the man blurted. The man looked at me and saw me injured on the floor, then saw Lord Zed slowly advancing to me.
"I'm just guessing I was called here to fight Zed. Sure beats doing the word search,"
the man muttered. He then held out a strange version of the Power Morpher and morphed. He was a strange red ranger with a black helmet and a golden chest shield with the Cornish flag on it. He summoned his sword and ran at the Lord Zed and started fighting him. I sat there and watched for a moment, as this red ranger seemed to know his way around fighting, and also how to handle the Lord Zed in battle. It did not take him long to knock the Lord Zed down. Zed managed to zap the ranger with his staff, striking his chest. The ranger flew back and crashed by me. I managed to pull myself to my feet, and I offered my hand to the ranger and pulled him to his.
"If you want to leave, you can. I can handle Zed. Assuming my back holds out.
The ranger told me. You would let me leave and stay and fight him? You do not even know me, I asked.
You was in need. It's my job to help,
the ranger said to me. Then Lord Zed sat there and shot lightning at us once more. I pushed the ranger to one side and triggered my mystery powers, freezing the space I was in. I looked at the ranger. He stood there frozen in place. I saw his gentle nature, his father-like attitude, his skills, his maturity, and then looked at the Lord Zed. I knew it was a mistake trying to bargain with this version of the Lord Zed, and now I have doomed this ranger. Then I had a spark of genius. What if I changed the events and saved the ranger? Or I could just change the event entirely. I stood there and demorphed, my eyes turned all white, and I changed the events of the last 10 minutes. I changed my entire form being there altogether, making it so I was never there in the first place, making it so I never spoke to Lord Zed. And then I saw it. Zed was holding a piece of black armour, and then I saw that it was from the ranger's chest shield. It must have been damaged from the fight. I decided to leave it there. I looked at the Cornish ranger and had the idea of him helping my champions, but I'd need to figure out how. I clicked my fingers and left the Cornish ranger to the Lord Zed, knowing full well he was fine. I was still damaged greatly, so I used my mystery powers to find somewhere I could not be found, somewhere safe. I found somewhere called the Land of Time and Space. It was a pocket dimension, with nothing but darkness, strips of purple light floating around, and huge massive rock platforms. Some of them had flat surfaces, so I teleported in and alternated one platform to make it more suitable to live in. I slept. My new form needed rest. When I awoke, I could not stop thinking of the Red Cornish Ranger. I knew I had to keep one eye on him. I meditated, and I used my mystery powers to search for him. The version I met was from Universe 20. It turned out his name was Mark. My original idea kept plaguing my brain. I could use someone like Mark. I sat there with the idea for some time. Luckily, I was in a time where time didn't exist. This place had no time or space. So, lucky for me, I could sit there and ponder as much as I wanted. Then it hit me. Time doesn't affect me. I can walk through amongst the multiverse at any given time frame. I could change things. Makes Mark's journey influence my champions. I could save other universes from Rasfa's grasp at the same time. I used my mystery powers, but then I stopped. If I used it continuously, Sparks would know. I had broken one rule already. I just thought about breaking rules, and that scared me. I must not influence my champions. Luckily, Mark was not my champion, and Mark was not me. I made the decision to find a way I could keep an eye on Mark, Rasfa, or my champions all at once. I closed my eyes and tapped into my knowledge of this multiverse, given to me by my form. Merlin, the wizard. In most multiverses, he exists in the tales of King Arthur, but in the multiverse of the Power Rangers and the Morphin Grid, Merlin were mentors and associates to Rangers. He made teams and aided them in battle. They all had ability to see through other Merlin's eyes. They were all linked to one another, see through their eyes, and some could even see further than that. I used my mystery powers to find myself a Merlin who was alone in a broken and wasteland of the universe, a Merlin that I could use that would not be missed if I took him. I found one and prepared myself to get this Merlin. I also had the idea of making a team of Rangers, a makeshift team from nowhere but everywhere. I could not let the past events that had just happened happen again. I cannot rely on summoning random people to save me if I ever got into a tight spot like that. I decided I would make a team, a task force, so to speak. I meditated some more and hoped Sparks didn't feel my constant use of my mystery powers. I summoned a chessboard and moved a white pawn 1 square forward. I took a deep sigh in and I started making my plan. And there you have it, guys. The first entry to William Cranston's diary. I hope you guys did enjoy this. Big shout out to Mark, the Red Cornish Ranger, on the Nerds Through Comics podcast. He just was willing to lend me his voice for an older version of his character. Now, this is a Three Ranger Bros story, so make sure you go check out the Three Ranger Bros. You have Mark, the Recon Ranger with Nerds for Comics, where he adapts comic books into audio dramas. He's got his own story, Power Rangers, the Royal Britannia, and he also shares some of my own stories. Then you have Cosplay Dude 637 with Power Rangers Universe 19, the podcast, Storytime of Cosplay Dude 637, the podcast, Sailor Moon E, the podcast, and Storytime Nostalgia, the YouTube channel, which you guys should check out all of them. So many different storylines, so many fabulous stories, you should go listen. Then, of course, in association with Zero to Hero, the bumbling brothers that are the Balkan Scholar podcasting, Billy and Jim, talk a lot of Power Rangers and other fandoms, and they also interview people, so maybe you should go check it out. They're a blast to listen to. Thank you very much for watching and listening to this video. This story is something that's been in the works for a long time, and I cannot wait to show you guys more entries to William's diary. Don't forget to check out Tiger Tales, and go listen to the Power Ranger storylines, where you'll see William Cranston in action, and a different William Cranston, because this story that I just told you is the build-up to the William Cranston in my Power Ranger stories. That being said, don't forget to subscribe, and I shall see you guys really soon.